one ever hires someone because they're the smartest person in the room. What they're looking for is the most effective. What is a specific goal for this particular conversation under the auspices of that theme?
I'm going to have to ask you what auspices mean. I have no idea
like
what
the
you
umbrella.
said.
Like like there's an umbrella of a theme.
Awesome to meet you officially. I wouldn't really count the other day because it was like a brush pass, but
Right.
Yeah, I was really impressed by what you were saying. I love the mentality of how to scale it properly and how to,
Thank you.
Making sure that you're building a business, not a job. And that's why I was like, as soon as you were talking, I was like, yeah, let's further dive into this.
Oh, thank you.
So for people who are listening, who is Parissa and what do you do?
So thank you for asking. Thank you for having me join you today. My name is Parissa Behnia, and I am the business whisperer of Sixense Strategy. And what I do is I work with leaders that typically go 80 miles an hour in a 45-mile-an-hour zone without checking to see if their clients or their teams are strapped in for the ride, let alone interested in the destination. So my favorite types of clients to work with are the disruptors, the change agents, the innovators, the people that have a big idea, and sometimes they are their biggest obstacles in terms of getting from point A to whatever point they're trying to get to. I think they're so much fun, and it's never a dull moment.
Yeah. It's have you heard that saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together?
Yeah. That's exactly right. And that's one of the things that's one of the hardest things for them to learn is it's okay to shed that suit of armor that they've been wearing for so long. It's okay to have a little bit of vulnerability to say, I'm not good at this, but I know someone who is. And you go further faster when you're working together. I couldn't say it any better than how you just said it.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to take credit for that because someone else said it. I stole it. So how long have you been doing the business whisperer? How long have you been doing that for? Is that like a new venture that you've done, but you've done the actual mentoring before that, or were they were born together?
That's a really thoughtful question. So I've always been the person with the gray hair before I actually had the gray hair. I was always the advisor. I was always the person separating the wheat from the chaff, not only professionally, but then as I was also talking to friends, colleagues, etc. But in terms of me doing this executive coaching and advisory, it's only the last 3 or 4 years, mainly because I took that lens that I offered to other people and I turned it around and I said, wait a minute, if I were to productize myself, or if I were to be the best version of myself, or be the person that I was the happiest, what would that product be? And so I said, well, I would do advisory. I would do executive coaching. I would be that strategic, objective thinking partner that someone wished that they had as they are navigating to wherever it is that they're trying to go. And I realized that I was blocking myself from that which made me the most happy. I'm like, why am I doing this? So I've always been this person, but I've only given myself permission to be this person in the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. So what was blocking you think? Do you have anything that was stopping you from giving yourself that permission?
It's a good question. I think what blocked me from giving myself that permission is the belief that I actually could be successful in doing it, or belief that someone would want to retain me to be that person. When it's something that you've been born with or you've been doing for such a long time that you don't remember a time where you weren't doing it, it doesn't occur to you that that actually is a service that you can provide to other people. And once I started expanding my thinking and I realized in some consulting work I was doing, I was like, I'm doing more advisory. I'm doing more coaching than I'm actually doing consulting, A. And then the second realization, B, was I don't like consulting. So like, why am I doing the thing that makes me unhappy when there's this other thing where I am just, I could do it forever and never get tired of doing it.
Yeah. So what's the difference between consulting and advising?
That's a great question.
All right, so this is a quick ad break. First one I've done in here, and it's because I finally got a sponsor, and that sponsor is me. A lot of people have been asking me, Blake, what is it you do? They think I do a podcast and that's all I do. But the reality is I actually create content for businesses on social media that will actually build a proper relationship with your audience instead of it just being pretty stuff. Because the reality is I don't do content for you. I do content for your customers. One major thing I've noticed in the Southwest Florida area is that there's a lot of great videographers, cinematographers. There are some great ones around here. But what is missing is the way in which they create that content to communicate with the right audience for your company, whether it's air conditioning, whether it's roofing, it could even be real estate. They're not leading with what is going to interest the customer. Instead, they're leading with what interests the company. The problem is now, though, with that, if you're talking about yourself, you're going to miss out on actually reaching the people that are going to buy your shit. So if you want to find out a little bit more information about how your business can reach the right people, hit the link in the description of this podcast. It'll say skymediahouse.com, or hit me up on Instagram at I'm Blake Doyle. Slide in my DMs. And I'll get back to you to show how you can actually reach the right people for your company so that you can build a relationship with the customers and make sales a lot easier, because there's not many people doing it in this area. Let's get back to the show.
So there's coaching, there's advisory, and there's consulting. When you are retained as a consultant, it's because the client believes that it's cheaper, and I'm putting that in air quotes, it's cheaper to retain you to do the work than it is for them to learn how to do the work and then take the time to do it themselves. They just don't have the expertise. It's cheaper to farm that out. Just like it's cheaper to farm out a bathroom remodel, or if you're not a handy person, for example. So that's consulting. Coaching, and so you're retaining an expert in consulting. In coaching, it's believed that the client is the expert in the doing of whatever it is that they're doing. What the coach is the expert in asking some really thoughtful, pointed questions to help the client see their own possibility that the coach sees for them. So the coach is always seeing more expansively than the client, because the coach doesn't have skin in the game.
Yeah.
Right? I'm sitting next to my client. I'm not them. So I can see what the opportunity landscape looks like for them. And when you ask a series of really thoughtful, pointed questions, you challenge some assumptions. When they get that eureka aha moment, then all bets are off. They are moving rapidly to wherever it is that they are trying to go. And advisory feels like a hybrid of coaching and consulting. Like the advisor is not going to do the work. Maybe the advisor will be a little directive in terms of how the work will get done. A coach won't advise unless they're being given express permission to do so.
Yeah. So you're like a compass as well, in a way.
Yeah. You're checking for someone's readiness to hear some hard truths, and also checking for when maybe a gentler touch is a little bit more appropriate. And so it's permission based. It's, may offer an observation, or let me tell you what I'm seeing right now, asking a series of open-ended questions to get to what the matter at hand is.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit more, it's not that it's the coach isn't engaged, it's just how the work gets done, or the purpose of the work is different from consulting.
And so, because obviously when people are in that position in their business, there's a lot of ego that goes with it, a lot of ownership, and that mentality that they can't do it as good as I can. And it's like, well, yeah, because sometimes they can't, but that's why you're the boss. Because you were like the ground zero, and so if you can't do it well, you can't hire someone, because you can't teach them or whatever it is. Because I did that with my father-in-law's business, super successful pest control in West Virginia, but I could see where all their problems were with, turnover, also just different mentalities of how they wanted to approach it. And it all came down to a lot of just broken systems and, this worked before, or telling people how to do stuff. I'm I'm not a fan of, in order to teach someone, tell them. I love third person. So like if they're on the phone on the sales team now, I've had to get my father-in-law to, I've been like, you're not telling them, because if you tell someone, they go, yeah, I know. That's me brushing you off, not even consciously.
Right.
But so the way I restructured it for the training for them was, and this was hard to break down, not his ego in terms of I'm good, but it was more just he loves being the person giving advice.
Yeah.
And I go, you got to break that. That's the hardest part. And using the tool of third person as your training tool.
Right.
And so what we do now for the sales team is we have certain recordings of phone calls, and we just go through them randomly. So one, you're going through them randomly, so they can't feel like they're being picked on.
Right. Exactly.
Because you're like, I don't even know what's going to come up now.
Right.
But also them hearing it third person, it's like, oh, why did I say it that way? Or I can see how I lost it, or I scared that customer away.
Right.
Or wow, that actually came across really good.
Right.
And we've noticed a huge shift, and it still is, a lot of progression to be made, but those aha moments and those teaching moments hit so much harder. But part of it for me was, and kudos to him for, I guess, letting me, and it took 12 months of, what is this? My son-in-law, who has zero experience in building a business, is telling me all this advice, and I had to like incrementally sort of weasel different things. Yeah. Whereas it was funny because, as soon as something bad would come up, he'd turn around and go like, see, this has to improve. And I'd be like, Steve, no. Like talking to a child, I'm like, I'm sorry. But if I have to be like, stop. And be like, all right, hold on. And then they'd realize what he was going to say anyway. But because they realized it, that synapse was like, oh.
Yeah.
And then also hopefully he then sees, oh, they're not idiots. But if you tell them first, you always are building that narrative that they don't notice it without me. And I'm like, well, you're not giving them a chance to tell you. So with egos with bosses, and I mean, I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just it's a human condition.
Yeah, we're all human.
Do you have any like sort of, it's not negotiation, but I guess every conversation's a negotiation in a way.
Yeah.
Is there ways in which, or any techniques in, I guess, for lack of a better word, that you use to, I guess, pull out and extract the information to guide them? Is there anything like you've got that you could pass on to people, be like, this is how you could communicate to your boss, or if someone sees an issue,
right?
Do you have anything that you use that you find is quite beneficial?
So one of the most beautiful set of tools that everyone has been taught in elementary school, no matter what language you learned in elementary school, or whatever language you speak, that's your native tongue. Open-ended question words: who, what, where, when, how, and the word why used sparingly, because when you ask a why question, people go into defensive mode.
Yeah.
And so it's help me understand what the assumptions are behind this conclusion, or what drove you to believe that this is so, or how did you make that happen? And so what that does, to your point about third person, it stops being about a particular person and more about the thing. Mm-hmm. And so when we have conversations about the thing and not about the person, that's where insight lives. So that's one thing, just those basic question words that we learned in elementary school. And then the second thing is, and you alluded to this, is the power of silence. Don't ruin things by talking. So if you've sensed that you are coming up at a moment where you can see the gears moving in someone's head, don't say anything. Let them come to the conclusion. Let them have the ownership of the realization instead of giving them the answer over and over and over again. And so one of the best tools I use if I'm in the middle of a coaching session and I hear an answer that doesn't ring true, I'll just kind of look at them, or it's on Zoom or it's in person. I'll just say, how true is that?
How true is that?
And then we just kind of sit back and I will wait. I have developed the patience muscle, which for people who know me in real life know that I'm not a patient person. But in those moments, it's more important to take those very short minutes for someone to say, oh, I just got an intuitive hit, or, oh, I see your point, or, oh, I understand what I could be doing instead, whatever it is that their realization is, whatever that aha moment is. So those two sets, the open-ended question words and the power of silence. And then the third thing is sometimes a pattern interrupt. And you have to use it sparingly. You can't always do this. But a pattern interrupt would be calling them on their stuff and telling them that what they've said doesn't ring true. Not that they are a misleading person, not that they are a liar, not that they are dishonest, but that thing they've just said sounds like rubbish, for lack of a less polite term.
You can be as rude as you want on this.
And I was on a call the other day with a client, and I just flat out said BS. I mean, you can't always pull those out, right? But when it's called for in that moment, that's when you can get a lot of really juicy stuff to come out, and the conversation moves forward. So those three things: the open-ended question words, the power of silence, and then a pattern interrupt.
Yeah, so what you said as well with the removal of you and me, that's a very, I've been practicing that for about 18 months or more now. And it is true that the way in which it gets people to critically think and their defense mechanism kicks off a little bit,
right.
It's a powerful tool. Because I know, I mean, again, if you knew me a couple of years ago, my defense mechanism was jacked. It was so high.
Yeah.
But again, when it's more about the thing, and that's one thing with a lot of people, whether they're conscious of it or not, like we are beings that are about the ego.
Right.
But it's like, oh, you seem like you're doing this. But the problem with that is all of a sudden it becomes, oh, I know something you don't.
Right.
Versus it seems like this thing is upsetting you for some reason. All of a sudden I've just made you look at the thing and you're like, oh, yeah, maybe. Versus I'm smarter than you, because no one likes that.
no one, and no one likes to know it all. And no one ever hires someone because they're the smartest person in the room. What they're looking for is the most effective. And we're not going to be the most effective if we're spending a lot of time making someone look wrong and someone else look right.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, it's a prodigious waste of time. It's tempting because we're human, and that stuff will happen no matter how well you find your triggers and know what your triggers are. We will slip up from time to time, but this making me right so that someone else can be wrong is horrible. It's like setting fire to time and money.
Okay, yeah, I like that. Setting fire to time and money. And so who do you typically, would you say you mentor or is it you advise? What's the adjective that you use to describe what you do?
Coaching and advisory, executive coaching and advisory, yeah.
So who do you typically coach? Is it like early startups? Is it small to mediums? what do you focus on?
So I look more for mindset as opposed to size of company. I have coached the founders of funded startups, and I coach people that are in the C-suite of various companies. Some are publicly traded, some are late-stage venture-backed, and some are still privately held. But the leaders I tend to work with are the ones that are making the decisions or major decisions for the business. If they own a P&L or they're in the C-suite, they have significant impact on the direction of the business. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, okay. And so when is it typical, because I mean, usually when we think of someone advising, we think of just the one. Have you ever been in situations where they have multiple advisors to get different opinions of directions to sort of sift out what they feel resonates with them? Have you ever been in that situation?
So I'm in a situation now where I know my client. I'm the coach for my client, and then I also know that the CEO has his coach. There are plenty of situations where lots of leaders have lots of coaches. But in terms of advisory, that feels like more of a board thing, an advisory board thing.
True. Yeah.
Versus XYZ coach for the CEO and ABC coach for the COO or something like that. This is where we're going to get into a little semantics, and we're not going to belabor it, but there are people out there that call themselves coaches, but really what they are consultants. They are just slapping the term coach on, and I am very specific about where the line is between a coach and a consultant. There are plenty of business coaches out there that are actually consulting, and then they are giving specific advice, or they are doing along with the client, and that's fine. They are free to call themselves cucumber if they wish, but what they are not coaches. And so I won't do the work. I will be that person to help you kind of get unstuck. But to tell you what step A, step B, step C is, I won't do, or I won't give you a template. That's just not me. And they are an expert in their business. I am not an expert in their business. Now, am I often invited to give my professional perspective because I've worked for big corporates? I went to business school. I've advised formally and informally funded startups. Sure, when someone's inviting me to opine, I will. But until such time I'm not invited to opine, I won't. I'm just going to stay in that coaching lane, because it can get blurry, and I don't feel comfortable in that blur. There's something about it, just for me. Unethical isn't the right word. It's just not clear. It's not transparent. Maybe that's the best way to put it. Yeah.
And so is it predominantly over Zoom, or is it in person? Or
it's been both. In the before times. Before COVID, I was meeting in person and over Zoom. During COVID, it was all Zoom, but lately I've been doing things in person. Just this past week, I was in San Francisco briefly for a client workshop. I'm often asked to meet clients in person. It's on a case-by-case basis, engagement-by-engagement basis. Sometimes it calls for it, depending on the person on the other side of the table, and other times it doesn't call for it. So all of my engagements are bespoke in the sense that I'm sensing what would be most valuable, and that's how I construct the work that we do together.
Yeah. And so what does an advisory session look like? I mean, I'm just trying to picture it, because the more I unravel it, it's more fascinating that it is kind of like it's sort of similar to a therapist, but it's business related purely, where it's just like, okay, these are your blocks. Like, not that you're labeling it, but it's like, I can see there's some bullshit happening mentally right now that's blocking you from making this, or at least looking at this decision correctly?
Yeah.
Is it sort of like you let them talk it out, or we've touched base last week or last month, or however frequent it is, and this is what you're experiencing, this, and this. How are those movements happening now? And let's revisit them. Like, what does a typical session kind of look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So every time I open a session, I ask the same series of questions. So I ask them, just generally what the theme might be. And then I'm like, okay, great. What is a specific goal for this particular conversation under the auspices of that theme? Because a theme can last over a couple of different sessions.
I have to ask you what auspices mean. I have no idea
like
what
the
you
umbrella. Like
Okay.
like there's an umbrella of a theme, and then you can have different conversations under that same theme. So thank you for the clarifying question.
I like to think I'm smart sometimes, but that was over my head.
Not at all. And then I get into, I really try to get a little bit more specific as to what it is they would like to accomplish during that time. Some conversations feel specific in terms of at the end of the conversation, I want to feel like I'm walking away with, I don't know, X. And other conversations are a little squishy. I am good either way, but let's establish that the conversation is squishy, or let's establish the conversation you would desire that there would be something specific at the end of it.
Yeah.
And the reason why that is that you can't boil the ocean, but what you can do is boil a series of tea kettles. I just want to figure out what the tea kettle is in the beginning of the conversation so that we are all in with one another. And so once we've established what we're going to talk about today, it's a series of open-ended questions. What's driving this? What is this really about? And then really it's peeling back the layers of the onion until we get to the thing that it actually is, as opposed to what is presented.
Yeah.
Really getting to the heart of the matter. Now, what happens in a coaching session is it's meant to be forward thinking. It's, all right, now that I have this insight today, or now that I've had this aha moment today, what's something I can do on a go-forward basis that reflects the insight I have? Sometimes it's more thinking time. Sometimes it's journaling time. Sometimes it's a conversation. Sometimes it's a meeting, or whatever it is. I'm indifferent as to what their chosen or desired action is, but it is meant to be a forward movement. So the difference between this and what therapy might look like is that therapy looks at what may have been broken in the past to help repair, to function at one's best in the present. What a coach looks at is I'm looking at what is happening in the present. I'm being mindful and respectful of what may have been broken in the past, so that as we are writing our future, we can incorporate all of those elements. A coach doesn't repair. That's what a good therapist is for. A coach will refer out to a therapist when they sense something is too broken in the past to be able to create a going forward. And they are still mindful of what may be tender or broken as they are helping the client see what their opportunity looks like. And so every coaching advisory conversation feels different from one to the next. I can't predict if they're going to be lighthearted at the end of it. I can't predict if they will cry in the middle of it. I've had both in the same session. It's trusting that something valuable will come out of it, so that the person sitting on the other side of the table will know what their next step could possibly look like.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So, and how many clients do you typically have at the one time, which you've noticed is the effective use of your time and energy? Is there
that's a good
number?
question. there's so many peaks and valleys. I mean, there's a client engagement that starts, and then in the middle of that, one other one starts, another one ends. So I always have like these flows. I wish I could answer the question for you. I really can't.
Yeah.
And it's also what other things am I doing on the outside in addition to my coaching practice? So a specific example is that I've been writing a book, and so I'm working on my manuscript. That takes away time from actual client work. So it's probably best that I don't have quite as many clients so that I can focus on, the editing and the publishing and all of the things.
Yeah.
So I know you're asking for a specific answer.
No, it's all good. Sometimes there isn't a specific answer. It all depends. So the writing of the book, I've heard that is like real tough. And have you got anyone who's assisting with your writing, or is it just like it's all you? What's the process? This is a big tangent just because that book is fascinating. I don't know even what it's about. I just know that writing books are so freaking hard.
Yeah.
How long have you been doing that for so far in the development stage?
Thank you for asking. So the book is born out of a series of LinkedIn posts that I post regularly on LinkedIn. It used to be 5 days a week. Now it's 2 times a week and a video on Fridays. And so all of that raw material, people kept on poking me, and they said, by the way, this is a book. And I was like, oh, get out of here. That's not a book. That's crazy. And so last year I started saying, well, maybe it is a book. Maybe what this is the inspiration or a compilation of all of my thoughts on LinkedIn, targeting that same person who I call a modern badass, the disruptors, the change agents, the pattern interrupters, the people that are the Steve Jobs of the world, the people that are the Malala Yousafzais of the world, the people that force you to stop and look at things differently. You don't have to like them personally, and you can still recognize the impact that they have on all of us. Elon Musk is an excellent example. Kamala Harris is an excellent example. Ruth Bader Ginsburg is an excellent example. All of these people have had outsized impact on us.
Yeah.
And so what I realized is what I was writing was a love letter to those types of people, mainly because those types of people tend to struggle the most in a corporate environment. They are too much, or they're called bulls in china shops.
Yeah.
And in my corporate life, that's what I was called, that I was called too much, that I was called the hardest person to manage. I felt misunderstood. I felt sidelined. I felt unheard. I felt like I wasn't respected. I knew I wasn't communicating in ways that were effective, and I just didn't know how to get out of my own way. And so that's what this book is meant to be, this love letter to these modern badasses.
Yeah. Sorry.
So what I did was...
I'm the bad host. Sorry.
No worries. No worries. So I worked with a book coach to help me take all of this raw material and then turn it into a manuscript that would be good for public consumption.
Yeah.
So, how do you organize all of your thoughts? How do you take all of that raw material and content out there and put it in an order that for the person sitting on the other side of the table, if they're the modern badass, or if there's someone who they know that there's a modern badass on their team, how would the book land with them such that they would feel like, oh, there is someone out there that gets me. Oh, there is someone out there that has perfectly described this high potential leader that I have on my team. And so the best gift I gave to myself was to work with this book coach. Kind of doing it on my own, no. That's like, I'm a great writer. It doesn't mean that I'm a great writer for books.
Yeah, it's a different medium to consume information.
Right. Precisely. And I knew that my book coach would have a lens on what a successful book would look like. And I would never have the line of sight. Again, it was cheaper to retain him than for me to figure it out for myself.
Yeah.
And so the beauty of working with him is this is a hybrid publishing model. So it's kind of self-publishing yet not. They're the ones that deal with Amazon and the ISBN number and all of the things. They are the ones that
admin stuff.
Yeah, all of the admin stuff. They're the ones that help me with the graphic design. They're the ones that introduce me to really wonderful, delightful book editors so that I don't feel like I'm by myself. So I don't feel like I'm chief bottle washer and CEO all at the same time. Not a good use of time. I'm a big fan of recognizing what is not a good use of time.
Do you, on this point of time, do you outsource like your cleaning of your home or anything like that? Is there stuff?
Oh yeah.
Yes. I'm such an advocate for it. That's like my wife and I said that's the first thing we want to do. I've outsourced my haircut in terms of the hairdresser comes to my house. That's the first one because nothing in Florida is close.
Right.
Like in Sydney when I live back home, I wouldn't drive 20 minutes for lunch. I'm like, no chance. There's no time for that. Now it's like if something's 20 minutes away, it's like standard.
Right.
You know?
Right. So, it's crazy how what you believe is standard has changed. Yeah, I am. So I split my time between Chicago and Naples, and what I noticed in my urban life that I'm trying to bring into this life in Naples, which is for me markedly not urban, is what is the highest and best use of my time and talent. And anything that I do that is not in service or supporting the highest and best use of my time and talent, outsource it. Yes, it technically costs money, but it costs more money to do the thing that is outside of what you're best doing. And so bookkeeping, tax preparation, any kind of legal document preparation, house cleaning, anything that can possibly be outsourced, I will try to do. And where I'm at the brink of doing, I haven't found this person yet, is getting a VA for my business partner, who's also my partner in life, for him and I to share. Because there are repetitive things that he and I are doing, like scheduling meetings.
Yeah.
Or he has a vast spreadsheet for the consulting work that he does that always requires updating. Just hire someone, train them. It takes time to train them, but once you've trained them, then it's always cheaper
it's an
for
investment
that
that
person.
pays dividends.
Right. So anything that you can do to outsource that which you are horrible at, have at it.
Even if you're good at it, but it's not your best thing.
Precisely. Even if you're good at it and it's not your best thing, outsource that as well. And I get early on in someone's business that may not be available to them, or there's something that feels repetitive and highly sensitive. Sure, you could go ahead and take the time to figure out how to make it work for you.
Yeah.
I'm not sitting in judgment of anyone. I'm just pointing out that anything that you do outside of that which you're best at is setting fire to time and money.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of people too, it's this scarcity mindset of, say $10,000 comes in. It's like, oh, I want that 10 grand.
Right.
For me, I'm like, all right, cool. How can I get as much of that money to do nothing? Like that's the ultimate goal, where it's like, all I'm saying is like, all right, I pulled a client in. Cool. Here's your setup. Boom.
Right.
That's the ultimate goal. And I mean, I'm in a very fortunate situation where we moved here a year and 2 months ago, staying at the in-laws vacation home. So I said to my wife when we first moved here, I'm like, I'm in a very rare position where I have the lifestyle of a 20-year-old, like not paying rent, car's been given to me until we can get ourselves above water. But I have the mindset of an early 30-year-old. So I'm like, that's a very rare scenario. And so it has been this thing of building so that when we do move out and we can get a house, I'm like, we're set because everything's fine in terms of like, what do you call it? There's the movement of that machine's already happening, because if I build it to enough and I'm like, all right, I can do this all myself. Then I move out. Now I'm freaking out over certain bills and stuff like that. And also putting off the things that I want. Like you look at my expense sheet and Stacey's like, you spend so much money. I'm like, 60% of that, so 70% is on the business. So, but that includes editors. Like the editing was one example where I was like, this takes so long. And some of it is real semi-cookie cutter.
Right.
And so I was like, well, I could give 50% of that to an editor.
Right.
She does it and then she'll send it to me. I'm like, all right, fix this, this and this. Boom. And now I've made 50% of the money by doing, just a tiny fraction. And also I think where employers get stuck, I was guilty of this. I enjoy now that I'm like, oh, I'm giving a job to someone. Like this girl's 17 in Miami and she's already almost making 50 grand a year with me at 17. And I said to her, I'm like, my goal is to get you to 6 figures before you're 19 would be, she's like, okay.
No, I mean that's you're putting money to work,
yes.
and it is a beautiful reframe, and that's how I choose to reframe it as well. So, the house cleaning service I found in Naples, one of the things that sold me on them was that they paid their employees a living wage. Said, okay, that is putting money to work, and that is allowing them to be able to pay their bills, pay the light bills, the food, and so on and so forth. Yes, inflation is a thing right now.
Yeah.
But there are plenty of companies out there that are not paying their people a living wage. So I said, okay, great. They're paying a living wage. I'm putting money to work. The amount of money I pay to the bookkeeper or tax preparer, the value derived from working with those people is far greater than whatever it is I'm paying them, because they are giving me the benefit of their expertise. Mm-hmm. The tax preparer, he's a CPA as well as a CFP. I don't know all of the arcane rules that I could create, and so he gave us some ideas. Like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that would be available to me, and I wouldn't go to jail. Right? Which is very important.
Good caveat.
yeah. And I'm like, oh, it's available to me, and it's legal. And I said, okay, great. Had I not chosen to work with him, so yes, I'm putting money to work, and the derived value is immense. The same thing with the bookkeeper. She has given us immensely valuable advice that, but for her, we wouldn't know, or we realized we were making poor decisions.
Yeah.
For $170 a month, that's all we're paying her, and we're getting, I feel like, thousands of dollars of benefit. It's almost embarrassing how little I'm putting to work.
Yeah.
In supporting her business or supporting anyone else's business for that matter. So when you put money to work, you derive immense value, not only because you're putting it to work, but whatever it is that you're getting in exchange for it.
Yeah. Well, the accountant one is that's my the biggest one for me with people. If you don't have an accountant, I'm like, you're literally throwing money away.
Yeah, you are.
You're not saving it. And I spoke to a lady recently. She's about my age, and she's like, yeah, I've been meaning to get one. I go, here's 2 stories about how you're missing out, and I want you to ask if you can afford to save that money. Quotation marks.
Right.
I was like, when I was 21, had an accountant. She was 400 Australian for the whole year, end of year thing. My girlfriend at the time, her and I earned the same amount on paper. We worked at the same job. And she's like, why would I pay $400 when I can do it myself? And I was like, I don't know. She knows a lot of stuff. She's better than me. And she goes, nah, I'm just going to do it myself. I was like, all right. So she goes, does it. She gets pumped. She goes, yeah, I got back $600 and I'll give or take. And I was like, oh, that's not bad. Not bad. Yeah. She goes, how much did you get back? I was like, I think $5,500. She's like, huh? And I go, so are you happy you saved that $400 now?
Right.
And then the same was during COVID with all the financial incentives to keep businesses running.
Right.
I have an accountant, same accountant. And, I'm like, hey, I heard about this thing. She's like, yeah, you can get this, this, and this. I was like, fantastic. I'm doing nothing. She's making a few thousand, but with the incentives, they were giving us tens of thousands of dollars to give to employees and everything. I was like, again, it's like that. But if I didn't have her because I wanted to save that $1,000 or $2,000 a year now, I could have lost tens of thousands of dollars that I never knew existed. And so I just said to this girl, I was like, so can you afford to save that money now? She's like, no, I can't afford that. To save, I need to spend it to invest. And so that's my, like with accountants, I never understand when people don't use them.
Yeah.
You know, that's the number one. That should be before the haircuts.
Yeah, that is, that's for me. I'm not smart enough to figure all of that out, and
You don't have the time.
Well, it's the time, and then also the amount of processing required to get it. God bless them. Let them do it, and it's more than worth the money that we spend, and however it is that we choose to put the money to work. And again, I get that there are people who are sensitive points in their business where it may not be available to them. No judgment, no shade. It is more of when it might be available to you and you could choose one thing. You don't have to do all the things I do.
Yeah.
But if you choose one thing that would minimize a burden to free you up for finding new clients or whatever it is that you want to do, it's definitely worth it. Just baby steps.
Yeah. It's funny because I think I'm the one where it's straight away. It's like, how quick can I?
Yeah.
I'll put up with short-term pain because it's really not short-term pain. I'm living in Southwest Florida. How painful can it be? But it's that thing of, instead of having a certain thing now, because I'm like even with moving out, I view life as business decisions as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's what actually makes me happier. So like, do we buy a house now, or do we, quotation marks, do it tough, get a duplex, which they're basically the same price. Now we live in half a house for another year or two, but we're getting ahead, each year for the next 2 years. So when we can get a house for ourselves, then that duplex is paying at least a chunk of that, thing. So I'm always trying to think that way.
Yeah.
Do you find that any of your clients, do they have any sort of, I guess, scarcity mindset or limitation, like, I can't invest into something, or I can't look into it? Those ones that have those mentalities, how do you get them across that line to sort of look at the reinvestment mentality in all regards?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, everyone grapples with some sort of scarcity. I've yet to, and I'm sure there are people out there that are born with all abundance. I'm sure they're there. I haven't met them yet, but I'm sure they exist.
They're probably delusional though, maybe.
maybe. I have found, for me, until such time we identify what the root cause of the scarcity mindset is, there's no Band-Aid that's going to allow someone to take an enormous leap into abundance.
Yeah.
And so, and again, not to go deep into what broke, because that's therapy land, but understanding what the root cause is, and to acknowledge it and say, all right, well, this is where this scarcity mindset originated from, or introducing someone to the idea that what they're holding on to is actually a scarcity mindset, because sometimes they don't realize. Fear and scarcity are like two sides of the same coin.
Yeah. And
so what the scarcity troll, what the fear troll will do is it will say something like, well, it's too risky. Mm-hmm. Or I can't assume that much risk. I can only assume 5% risk. The fear troll, the scarcity troll appears to be like the wise counsel, kind of helping you head things off at the pass. Mm-hmm. And it is a cheeky little thing, because this is born of experience, or this is just good thinking. But But the good thinking is actually your fear, your scarcity, making you play a smaller game. So how do you unpack what the triggers are to that type of thinking? And then once you see what the triggers are, you can head that off at the pass.
Okay.
But it takes a little bit of time, and it takes a little bit of poking the bear and testing some assumptions to see what form their scarcity and their fear troll takes up. For everyone, it's different. I wish it were a copy paste, and once I saw it, I'm like, oh, it's a
Yeah, just do this.
But it manifests itself differently. But the fear and the scarcity troll are two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, okay. Do you find, because one thing I've noticed recently is the more that I put myself into uncomfortable situations, the more I'm less afraid of an uncomfortable situation. To the point where it's sometimes I wonder if it's a mental disorder, because it's like 20 minutes in a 180-degree sauna just to mentally torment myself, but train the brain of being uncomfortable. But then there's also other things like external pressures, such as, my family's from Australia. All right, I need to figure out a way that I can build something where I can travel to Australia for a month, a year, and everything is still hunky-dory and smooth sailing. But then on top of that, it's like, all right, well, they also love to go to Europe, so like, how can I visit them for a week over Europe? All these things that are perceived hurdles create my goals, and it also is like my compass in a way, because I'm like, oh crap, I can't build something that's reliant on me. I have to build something where it is just like, all right, guys, you guys are good, go down there. Also there's other hurdles I think of, for example, with the people I want to hire. They also have goals. And I'm like, all right, well, so like one of them is my friend who's also in Chicago. He, I really want him to work for me. He also has these ambitions of like, he wants to travel around America, do stuff and be on the fly. So I'm like, all right, I'll build a system where you can edit my stuff. Our goal is to get you to 6 figures a year, only working the equivalent of 2 days a week. That's my goal for you. But I don't physically need you here. And so I'm like, all right, here's how we build this together and get you there so you can do these things. Those hurdles and those perceived struggles are really the things that are, for me, and my compass, where it also ends up being this safety net in a way too, because it is, how do I give him the life he wants, which also gives me the life I want. Same with the girl from Miami. What does she want?
Right.
How does she want? What does she want to achieve? All right, great. That's my hurdle. How do I create a product for you? Like, your job and what you're doing is a product I need to provide.
Yeah.
But then as well, if they're happy and they're like, dude, I'm making, $1,000 a day and I only have to do 2 days. Like, we're even talking about how to get him to it's $2,000 in 1 day. But what does that look like for the business in terms of how many people we have? What product can we use where I can funnel everything to you, and you don't have to do 2 things this day, 2 things that day. It's like, all right, we get them all through the week. You do them 1 day and then we've got them. Do you, with your coaching, do you ever go through, like, you pull in those things with the client and be like, all right, what are the hurdles that you've got? How can we approach that?
Yeah.
Is that a similar sort of thing of how you look at it with your clients and strategize?
Yeah, it's an interesting way of looking at it. So I always want to know what the end looks like. So start with the end in mind, and you're doing a similar thing. So start with the end in mind. Okay, great. Now that I know what the end in mind is, what are the conditions that need to be in place for the end of mind to come to life?
Yep.
Great. Now that I know specifically what these conditions are that will get the end in mind to come to life, the most important part is, who do I have to be in this moment and moments going forward to create the conditions to bring that end in mind coming to life?
Yeah.
And so it's not confidence, it's courage. Confidence is a lagging indicator of courage. So when you're trying something new or you're thinking about how you construct a product for that young woman in Miami or your friend in Chicago, what risk am I willing to assume in this moment to see if it will create the conditions that will create the end result in mind? You may have spectacular experiments that work out wonderfully, and you may have ones that you may say, okay, I don't ever have to do that again because that clearly doesn't work. And so that's really the conversation I have with my clients is that what's the end in mind? Let's have a really vivid picture of what it is that you want and what it is that you're trying to get to. And it's not about the doing of the things. It's what has to be true for me in terms of the mindset I have, the skill set I have, what's going on with me, holistically, whatever word you want to use, to make all of those things so. So it's, and what's the strategy? What's our strategy? What's the mindset we need? What's the skill set we need? What are the things that we have to bring energetically to the table to make all of this come true? A goal is a place to come from, not a place to get to. And so and that's what my coach says, and it took me like a million years to figure out. It felt like a million. I'm like, oh, that's what he means. But when it's a place to come from, it's I am now fully in ownership of it. It whatever at point X in the future that it actually comes to be, but I am in fully ownership of it now. Who do I have to be now to create it at whatever point X in the future?
Yeah, okay. Do you ever do stuff like affirmations with your clients that sort of, the reason I'm asking this question is, for me personally, I've found that it's that fake it till you make it to a degree. I'm not a fan of being fake, but it's more that, whatever we think basically becomes 99% of the time. So hence what you're saying, like with the blockages, like, oh, well, no, scarcity mindset, that is what we think. That I actually even make the goal of who I want to be into a sentence as much as I can. And I'll say it, throughout the day. If I'm driving, it just pops in my mind. I have to say it. And at first, so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because you're lying. But the more, like, one is like, because I'm a marketing guy, my thing is I'm the most known person in Southwest Florida. I just say it all the time. Like, I call this podcast the #1 podcast in Southwest Florida. Probably is, I'm just saying. But there's, I say that stuff all the time. I'm the most known person in Southwest Florida. And whenever I say that, automatically, like, even I'm saying it now, my brain goes, oh, you need to do this, this, and this.
Right.
I did that when I started with the mentoring for my father. Like, basically what you do is what I do with my father-in-law's business. I don't have the ambition to do it beyond that because I found I love doing this.
Right.
But with his thing, it was, I'm a trusted and respected leader. And I would say that over and over again. And every time I would do something that, like, say I was like, oh, with this, like with a staff member. And the next time I'd say I'm a trusted and respected leader, I'm like, oof, actually what I said the other day doesn't fit that. And it started, what I noticed with that was it starts, you have to say it all the time, but it starts with the flow of really uncomfortable because you're like, I'm not really that person.
Right.
And then as the actions start happening, that's the goal in a way.
Right.
That by that frequency bias in the front of my brain and reminder, it's this constant behavior adjustment that makes you start. And then all of a sudden it's like you start going, I'm a trusted and respected leader because these guys are calling me all the time because like, hey, I really need your opinion, because you listen to me. I'm like, oh, good. It's in line. But then even when I still say it again, and even stuff they might not have noticed, now I'm like, oh, no, actually, I shouldn't have done this. Have you ever done that with a client or like, because I know usually people feel like, ugh, with this stuff, but.
There's, so some people like to have a manifesto. So what my coach does, he has a very long manifesto. And so every morning, I don't know if he says them out loud. I need to go back and ask. I don't know if
That's
he says them out loud.
That's the hardest thing.
He likely does, but so he has this thing, and so he says his name, and then he says, what kind of partner he is, what kind of father he is, what kind of person he is. So he is really specific in these declarations. I haven't gone that far to invite someone to have affirmations, but what I have done recently, and it's such an interesting game to play, is I was in a mastermind session with a bunch of super high-end, wonderful coaches about 6 months ago, and my coach brought in another coach. And what this gentleman does, he's Jewish, and so Friday is the Sabbath. So at Shabbat, he lights a candle.
I found out about that last week, actually. Didn't know it was a thing.
Oh.
Yeah. Sorry. Side note.
No, okay. Yeah. The more you know.
Yeah.
So what this gentleman, Peleg, does is that he lights a candle at Shabbat, and then so he says for the week, yay me for blank. And so what Peleg does is that he calls out every single thing, even down to the mundane, to acknowledge that he had some sort of impact or he did some sort of positive thing that week as a way of reminding himself and processing his mind, because the mind is a computer. I did this thing, yay me for X. And every single sentence is yay me for, he won't cheat and say, and just write out a series of words, yay me for making the bed and then, making dinner, yay me for whatever. And he goes on and on and on and on. Some clients love doing it. Other clients feel silly. And it's because they are negotiating against their own value. And so one client in particular, I've been poking them to, if the list is however long it is, but what I noticed with my client was, well, that wasn't big enough. Oh, big enough according to whom? Like you had an impact on someone, or you did something that was constructive. Let's call it out.
Yeah.
There was, related yet not, Admiral Bill McRaven, he did this really famous commencement speech in 2014 at University of Texas at Austin, his alma mater, and people can Google it. It's his first piece of advice to the graduates was to make their bed.
Yeah.
And he was talking about his experience in training to become a Navy SEAL. That was the first thing, that their beds were inspected. And his point was, if you can't acknowledge that you've done a small thing like making your bed right, it doesn't allow you to prepare for the accomplishment of the large things. And that
so it's
was
not just about the bed; it's about the accomplishment.
Right. It's about the accomplishment of the thing. So to your point, an affirmation or a manifesto, it's, I have done this. This is the impact that I have in the world. For me, I have a 25-year mission that I want to be the world-renowned coach of modern badasses and 3D leaders, such that corporate boards, CEOs only think of me when it comes to those types of leaders. But, a 25-year goal can feel like boiling the ocean. So what are things that I can do in 90-day sprints in service of the goal? And so, yes, affirmations. I am the number one podcaster in Southwest Florida. I am the most successful digital marketer in Southwest Florida. I am the most successful executive coach in Southwest Florida, whatever it is. But then what are the things that represent that in 90-day sprints? And it's like, yay me for X.
Okay.
So almost like building blocks, because it can, for someone like me, it can feel overwhelming to say my 25-year goal is,
it's too far away.
It's too far away, and it's so weighty, and I feel my mission so powerfully, and at the same time it makes me say, who am I to say that I am this person? But when it's broken down into 90-day sprints, it's, I can do that.
Yeah. And so because the 90-day sprints, I've heard of them. My technique's different, where it's I I learned it from Kerwin Ray. Don't know if you know him in Australia. I think you should look at that dude changed my life from his event. Super knowledgeable, but I watched this guy command a room of 500 people that it was like, and he's all about business, self-growth. Like I learned a great motif from him, or I guess lesson, not motif, but he pulls people in with the lure of growing their business, and then it becomes a personal development thing,
right?
You know, and he basically addresses it because it was a 3-day event, and you know, at the end of the first day, he was talking about all this, like he's done Vipassana, he meditates 2 hours a day, and he only works 6 hours a day, but he's the one that got me meditating because he was like, he was talking about you're training your brain to sharpen it like a tool or sharpen it like a knife, and that's what the meditation is. But people go, I haven't got time for that. He goes, the thing is, when you do that, what I get done in 6 hours because of that 1 hour meditation each end, I get more done in 6 hours than if I was to work 12 hours without the meditation. But his the way in which he structures his goals is, it's, you know, you've set aside with your team a 1 year goal, and you've got maximum 6 things. That's it. And they're the big one. And he goes, then you reverse engineer it. So you got 4 days of evaluating the year prior and then setting out the goals. And then each quarter, you do a day and a half of evaluating the last quarter, but then also looking forward to the goals in that 90-day sprint. And then each month in those quarters, it's a full day of planning, and then retrospectively looking at last month, and you do the same thing all the way down. You know, people go, oh, I haven't got time for that. But he broke it down. He goes, you're allocating 7 days of the year to your planning. That's all it is. But what happens is, you know, each morning it's like, all right, what's my things for the week? All right, I'm going to do these 5 things today. And I find that is...
Yeah.
So I guess it's got a 90-day sprint in it being the quarter.
Right.
But finding that micro way to always look forward, even on a daily basis, it helped. It literally changed my life.
Yeah, it's I'm doing these things in service of what? So, I mean, someone could have a 90-day sprint, someone could have a 1 week sprint. I mean, like, it doesn't matter. It's what you're doing, though. I think what you're saying is it's in service of whatever the larger goal is. And so you are very mindful and careful about the activities, what activities you do or what activities you don't do. To our earlier conversation, like, does it serve? If it serves, great, stay the course. If it doesn't serve, stop doing or ask someone else to do it for you. Yeah, this clarity on your goals, and then clarity on why it's important for you to be able to hit these goals. And, you know, I want freedom, I want flexibility, whatever it is that your values are, and aligning the goals with the values, it becomes easier to answer the in service of what question.
Yeah, okay. In service of what? I like that. I like that a lot. Do you ever, I think you already answered this, but you don't really... Do you strictly stay away from anything that's personally affecting their goals? In, like, you know, obviously it's impossible to separate personal and business.
Yeah, I mean,
do you just strictly stay away from that? Like,
it's stuff comes up. So patterns that they experience in their professional life, or patterns that they are likely experiencing in their personal life. I mean, we're not robots, right? Like we can't turn off the personal parts of our lives because they impact us. You know, a fight with a teenage child, can impact how we show up at work. Losing a parent will impact how you show up at work, or maybe you'll get some insight because you're having these personal struggles, and it will shine a light on what's going on with you somewhere else, or you're able to draw some connections. So caring for them as people, seeing them holistically, even though you are retained specifically, is what what the job of the coach is. You know, I can't solve for someone's relationship issues or why they're dating the wrong person or why they'd like to be dating someone, but those things do come up in service of the broader conversation.
Yeah,
it would be a loss of trust if I were to hold my hand up and say, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa! That's not why you retained me. We're not going there." Because there's some juicy stuff going on in other parts of their life that will help them unpack what they may be experiencing professionally.
Yeah.
It would be a disservice if we didn't cover it.
Yeah, and so in those examples, is it more just like how do you approach those ones? Like say for example, obviously, the biggest one usually is like the spouse or the husband, depending on who you're speaking to. That it is just like, like, is that juggling act of the business and the family time? Because that's what we're always figuring out on a daily basis.
Yeah.
It's like, all right. And I had that conversation with my wife because she wants to build her, she like online coaching thing in the spiritual space for relationships, but more geared towards single women. Because she's like, when the other half, I guess, gets too messy and you can't do that over Zoom.
Sure.
So one thing I did for her was, because she always wants me to help her, and I go, I'm either a husband or a business partner, but the business partner part of your husband has a price. Because me helping you, that actually takes money away from the family because I could be getting money for the family. And we had this conversation literally recently. And I had to sort of draw that line with her, which was, I want you to succeed, but like she wanted to refilm her last course. And I said to her, I'm like, all right, well, me and my team have a fee. And what's going to happen is you need to bring in some money with the current course, which she can. Then whatever that is going to be, you pay me. It goes into the family fund, which she can't touch. It's then group decision money.
Yeah.
But that's because otherwise, if I'm doing this time with you, that's going to take away from family time because that's not going to get reallocated because it's like this is not returning it's not making a return yet for the family. But in that, my theory is it's also teaching her business, because if I'm just helping her for free, there's no weight to it. And if she throws it, if she's like, that didn't work, can we just do it again? Now I'm going to, resent her for wasting my time or whatever it is, versus, all right, well, that money at least went into the family fund. But I think as well, when she can't then touch that money, she's now looking at it as a business, not just some like down a slip and slide scenario. Have you ever had to have some like conversations with that where it's, not that specific example where it's just like, the other half is pulling away from the goals of your client and how you can juggle that? Or do you end up saying that one's really specific, that's maybe a therapist scenario?
Yeah, it's sticky wicket, right? There's I have so many different voices in my head right now. There's so many different directions to go in. I'm trying to get away from the specific example and go to the heart of the question. So just give me a second.
Yeah. No identifying factors.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think is helpful in, should I do something or should I not do something? That's really kind of the crux of the thing. Or this thing is taking me away from this other thing.
Yeah.
Whatever that thing may be. It's, what are the pros and cons of doing something versus the pros and cons of not doing something? And so it's almost like a box, and the status quo. What are the pros and cons of the status quo? It's like a math. It's like a math.
Plus one, minus one.
Yeah, right. And then the pros and cons of doing something different. So it's like, what is the cost of change? and what is the benefit of change? And so it's a mindset thing. Is it more expensive to do it the way we've always done it, or is it more expensive to introduce change or introduce another way of looking at something?
Mm-hmm.
And that when we have those types of conversations, it's easy for someone to take the personal out of something and to say, all right, I mean, like, relationships are inherently emotional.
Yeah.
And what we're trying to do is let's get to a resolution where it makes sense, and I'm putting that in air quotes, without introducing a little bit too emotionality in it or blame or anything like that. And so the pros and cons of doing it one way versus the pros and cons of doing it another way, what is the more expensive thing? And based on the more expensive thing, what is it that you choose to do? There are any number of conversations I've had with clients where there have been like outside forces wanting them to play smaller, or outside forces wanting them to do other than that which they wish to do. And that is not the only time that happens for them, and that recurring pattern means that there's something inside them that allows the recurring pattern to occur.
Yeah.
And so let's unpack what the cause of the recurring pattern is, and then do a behavior interrupt so that we don't have it recur in the future.
Yeah.
There's one client I had 1 or 2 years ago who had very specific opinions for her family in terms of her career change, that, she had something conventional that she was very well compensated for, and she was launching something new. And the judgment about this something new was horrible.
Yeah.
And
placed in fear for her well-being.
Right. And it was preying on her scarcity troll. And it turns out that is not the first time they were attempting to be successful at wanting her to be different or wanting her to do something that felt better for them.
Yeah.
And so what inside her was allowing her to repeat that pattern? Let's break the habit. And then sometimes people will not be happy with you for breaking the habit.
Yeah.
And they will find different ways to engage with you such that they won't use those old behaviors to force you or manipulate you into doing something different. Yeah, I mean, there's outside stuff happens all the time.
Yeah.
And
it always seems to be your family that it's their good intentions, but unfortunately wrapped in fear, that are the self-destructing for you.
Yeah, often it's you're doing something different right now and it makes me uncomfortable, and so I'm going to do all of these things that are the physical manifestation of me being comfortable because you're doing something different right now.
Yeah.
Or you are doing something bolder than I feel comfortable with, and I'm trying to pull you back into the relatability zone.
Yeah. And those top people, I feel like that's one thing you always have to deal with.
Right.
Is you just get used to being. It's like you have to dig into your selfishness a little bit, and remove yourself from it. Which, I mean, that also creates other problems. But it's like, how much can you deal with that adversity just to put up with until you get to that point where they can see you're getting success, and then they're like, oh, I always knew you would do well. You just have to get to that point.
Like they want the credit for the thing that which they didn't want you to ever do. But going back to, and I know we said we weren't going to talk about specifics, but specifically, I would like to unpack, and I'm sure you know the answer to this question because it's your wife, what is it about her course that she wants to redo? What is it that she's afraid of?
It's more that quality-wise, we've grown. Like, I look back at my stuff 2 years ago and I'm like, oof, I wouldn't charge anyone for that, you know. I think that's really what it is, that she knows she can do better, and we can, like 100%, the quality we can improve upon.
Yeah.
That we actually did have this conversation. It's funny. She's like, well, can I charge this amount and still be on that thing? I'm like, well, you charged that amount 2 years ago. Like, she had a bit of a hiatus because pregnant and having the baby.
Yeah.
So that's where the 2 years went. Sienna, our daughter, now is 10 months old, and Stacey's starting to feel that burden of, I'm not doing anything. And, you know, so I've got that responsibility
Right.
to be like, well, here's how you do it, but I can't be the one that does it for you.
Yeah, I don't think this is about the course.
Really? Oh, no, I thought she just wants to be, she loves aesthetics. So it's all about making it pretty and everything else.
It has nothing to do with the course.
I'll elaborate.
It's the, you said something really interesting, just that I'm not doing enough. So she did something miraculous. The miracle of pregnancy, the miracle of childbirth.
And she's a cute little baby. I'm going to say that.
Excellent job. I'm sure she's the cutest
No bias
baby
at
ever.
all.
None at all. And I have worked with new mothers, and it's exactly this point of like, am I doing enough? Have I done enough? I don't know your wife, so I'm not suggesting anything. It's an identity thing. Who am I? Am I doing enough? What is the legacy? Now that I have this child, what is the legacy that I'm leaving this child? So yes, it could specifically be about the aesthetics, but underlying that is this legacy good enough? Or what am I doing that will be good enough for the future health and happiness of this child and whatever other children that may come? So yes, it is what you guys are talking about. And underneath, am I a good enough individual for this little human that relies on me?
That could be part of it. The other part that is, and I can say this because her and I have had these conversations a million times before, it's she feels like everything has to be completed before it starts. And that's the thing I'm breaking through with her. I'm just like, no one knows. Like, I didn't really.
No one knows it's not perfect. No one knows it's not done.
Yeah.
You release it in installments or episodes. No one knows.
Yeah. Well, even that. Well, like, I go, your stuff is still great, and it's. I had that realization when I was a personal trainer back in Australia. I was like, you just have to be one level above the person that's paying you. You don't have to be
the best,
the guru, because, you know, let's face it, the guru was not always a guru. And I had that conversation with a lady who, she came to me for content, but I'm like, there's actually a franchise business model that we can develop here that's purely online. And I sort of broke it down to her, and she told two other people, and they were like, one of them gave her the advice, but you're not a franchise. How can you be a franchise if you're a franchise? And I go to her, I'm like, tell me one franchise that was a franchise before it was a franchise. And she's like, huh? I go, McDonald's started off with one store.
Right.
It wasn't a franchise, but they had a proof of concept for that building. And then the goal was, all right, how do we make that into 2 buildings? All right, proof of concept. Now we can duplicate it. Let's make it this and this. And then now we've got a system that even that builds. And I go to her, I'm like, you're the proof of concept. You built your business from your kitchen. All we're doing is figuring out how to package that.
Right.
And find another woman or man who wants to do that from their kitchen. But that was the thing. It was like, no, you have to be at the end before you start. I'm like, that's literally impossible.
Yeah, it literally is impossible. And that's the fear, is the scarcity troll telling someone that they have to be done, or that it has to be perfect, or it has to look a certain way before someone is willing to pay for it. The perfect being the enemy of the good is a common thing for people who are high performers, people who just can't help but create.
Yeah.
And if it's not perfect, there's something about it that they take so personally, that they believe that they failed if it's not perfect. And it is it's excruciatingly painful to hold yourself to that standard. No one knows it's not perfect. No one knows it's not done. No one, or at least for now, is going to take you to jail for trying.
Yeah. That'll suck when they do.
Yeah, right. And it is natural and understandable for someone to be fearful. We are human. It is natural and understandable to be worried about taking that first step. If they weren't worried, I would actually be worried. So that sign of fear, that sign of worry, that sign of concern is actually a good thing. That means that they're feeling something visceral about whatever it is that they are embarking on. Great. That's delightful. You're human. Do it.
Yeah. And I mean, if people are listening or watching this, an example of it's not where it wants to be is literally this podcast. The cameras I've got, what I really want is high quality 4K. Those are like $3,000 cameras.
Right.
I'm like, that's one, it's not necessary. It's what I want, but it's not necessary. Whereas these cameras were, I think, $900 a pop. But I've never had someone say the quality's pretty shitty. I've never had someone say that. And so that's the example of literally the very thing where people listening to or watching this right now, it's not where I want it to be. But it's out there and it's opening up opportunities left, right, and center.
Right.
And it's not even the perfect product. It just is what it is, you know?
Yeah. I mean, we don't have to be 100% better every day. We can be 1% better. We can be 0.5% better. I mean, there's this undue pressure that we put on ourselves is excruciating, and that's often why people just sit everything out, or why people play a much smaller game. Because I can't do it all, I won't do anything, or I'll do the very basic, and I'll find a way to rationalize or justify to not doing the thing, or make it extremely basic. I am a recovering perfectionist. I know the horror and the pain of wanting everything to be perfect. I have very exacting standards for myself that I don't hold other people to. It doesn't mean that I don't have high standards for other people. I do.
Yeah.
They are also excruciating, but not to the same degree that I have for me. And just the idea of letting go of this idea of perfect, like, who's going to know? No one is going to know. I have fielded feedback about the videos that I post every Friday on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
They'll say, oh, Parissa, you've got the echo, or you're lighting this, that, or the other. And what I say to them is, thank you for your feedback. You're right. If I worried about all of that extra stuff, I'd never do it.
Yeah.
I can't think about what's not going well. And I have such, even to this day, such yucky feelings about being on video that if I spent more time worrying about the lighting and the audio, I would say, oh my gosh, nothing is perfect. I'm not going to do this now. So it is deliberately bad. I shoot them, and I shoot them on Loom. And then I mean, like, it's not even fancy. I have a Logitech camera when I've got it out, and sometimes I'm using the camera on my MacBook. I am perfectly aware of the poor production quality. I am not unaware, and I can't be bothered. Because what I have to say, or what I believe I'm saying, is so important that people will forgive the lack of perfection and pay attention to what I'm sharing with them instead.
There's a movement too with, like, I guess with TikTok, and everyone now can create content that is funny, because even on some aspects, poor quality actually resonates better. So there's a lot of marketing now. Like my friend who has a skincare company, like a moisturizer / skin, I think it's skincare, classified as that. And he was showing me one of their ads for TikTok.
Yeah.
And he goes, it's making me so much money. Now, it's still got the story. It's got it's got deliberate, like, it's very deliberate. But he's like, it killed me making such a crap video. It killed me. But if we did something that was really professional looking, if you're scrolling on TikTok and it's crappy quality, crappy, very good, it's jarring and you swipe past it straight away. Whereas that's why they did that poorer quality. And there's also like, I mean, you think about the movies when you look back at like the 90s movies, and there's that granular feel to it. It's slower.
Or 90s music videos.
Yeah, like there's that messiness to it that we actually resonate with it. And the music industry itself, privy to your point, the music industry had to unwind some of its perfectionism around like the mid-teens, so mid like 2015 and stuff, because their abilities, what they could do was getting so good that as it got more perfect, we weren't connecting with it.
Right.
And they had to start making more analog instead of digital.
Right.
But so there's even this unwinding of perfectionism. But I mean, I always just tell people with their content, mix it up, have both.
Yeah.
You know, because I'll do low quality stuff, then there's high quality stuff, and it's that yin and yang where people like, they can see it, but then like, oh, okay, there is that little bit of, it clicks that professionalism in the back of their brain, like, oh, this is really good. And then they see like, you know, my daughter headbanging to music at 10 months old, like just, you know, almost breaking her neck, which is just like me filming on my phone. But getting past that, like talking on camera, people, that's what I incorporate in my stuff, because it's that confidence thing, and like I coach them through it on how to talk, and I'm like, look, this is gonna feel like a disaster. Then when you watch me stitch it up, you'll be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I go, if you saw me off camera, I don't let my editor edit the stuff. I go, I'll edit it myself because you don't deserve that abuse. Like it's bad. Like I'm like, you know, to the camera, I'm like, come on, man, get used to like, and but I've been doing it for 10 years and I still go through it. And people just like, that's why podcasts are so popular now. Right. Because the people just want to hear real people, I think. And we're getting tired because we feel like we've been lied to so much. Right. So it's great you're doing that. And the echo is really easy to get rid of if you ever want a tip. It's very easy. Don't worry.
No, I know the solution is easy. I know that the lighting solution is also easy. It's also, that's not what I'm put on this earth to do. I'm not put on this earth to create video. I'm put on this earth to be an advisor and coach to these really dynamic, wonderful change agents, pattern interrupters, disruptors. That's what I'm orienting towards. Again, to the, you know, what's the best use of time and talent? Like I could get lost in the rabbit hole of equipment. Yeah. Like it would be so overwhelming to me.
Well, that's why people end up outsourcing that stuff, because I mean, I've seen it with just the ability for, like, you're already doing the stuff, and I think if you fine-tuned it, you would have more people reaching out. And it's so,
I'm sure of it.
It's so weird where it's like, you know, because of this podcast, I went to the gym the other day and someone's like, I follow you, I know you. I'm like, okay, cool. And then someone walked up to say hello to him. He's like, Blake? I'm like, hey. And, you know, I got a meeting after this where the guy, I've never met him, but he was just like, I need your services. I'm like, okay. And it's, nice. It's only because of social media. Do you do Instagram at all, or just LinkedIn?
Just LinkedIn. My people really aren't on Instagram.
They're not.
No, I mean, I have my own Instagram account where I go on vacations and I post stuff, but I have since learned my people are not on IG.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to have an alarm go off soon where it's actually telling me to get my wife to do her affirmations.
Ah, nice.
Yeah, I'm going to turn that off temporarily though, so it doesn't go off. Could you, I'm just like got an idea. And I don't know if, so collaboration's always an awesome thing. You could probably do like a 2-minute podcast for LinkedIn, where it's, you get on Zoom and you ask one question to someone, and then that's all it is one question, 2 minutes. And what will happen is their audience sees you, your audience sees them, and then you're absorbing it, and you're taking. I mean, you can do it on Loom, you could do it on Zoom, you can do it on everything, but it's like 3
I have a live
minutes out of your
stream
day.
account. I need to go through and create my editorial list for my live stream, but I have a live stream called Badass Bites that goes straight
It's
to
got a ring to it.
Yeah, it's kind of nice, right? And then Bites is BYTES, so I'm like trying to be clever.
Nice.
So that it goes straight to my YouTube channel, and then it's also on LinkedIn as well as Facebook. So thank you for the poke there. I need to go back and create my editorial calendar for the balance of the year of who I want to feature on Badass Bites. Maybe you'll join me.
Absolutely, I'd love to, because that's one thing I've noticed in terms of growth. It grows your network. Like I always say, like, even with these podcasts and this example, it's a lot easier for me to be like, hey, Parissa, would you like to be on my podcast?
Right.
Versus, would you like to get coffee?
Right.
You're going to be a little bit more busier if it's coffee than if it's this. And that for me, like, has just not only just a networking tool, but giving value on a widespread. I don't have to create anything. It's just a conversation. I'm not thinking about it. I'm not trying to be tricky. I don't think it was you. I think someone else who I've got this week, he's like, do you want me to send you some points on, what we can cover? I'm like, nah. I'm like, I want it to be raw, I don't want it to, like, the audience can feel if it's, if your content isn't genuine, and it can be still curated, but if it doesn't feel genuine, it can be, we turn off real quick. The only time I've ever had someone's come with points, it was my friend who's a mortgage lender, and it's because I have no idea. So I'm like reading through it, just like, so what's this? Like, I didn't know what FHA loan is. That's how new I am to the country.
Yeah.
But you've got this very unthreatening persona to you, and it's very warming. I think that
thank you.
If you show that curiosity in your audience as well, and people love to see stuff that they don't know about the other person. Like, even the people you're interviewing.
Yeah.
Like, I never knew that about that person. And LinkedIn, because I haven't focused too much on it. What do you see? Because I'm actually going to start focusing it as of this month. We're looking at testing some stuff.
Sure.
What have you noticed the outcomes from the videos in terms of, like, does it raise questions? Does it start any conversation with you?
A little bit of everything. So I try not to pay attention to vanity metrics regardless of the platform, because it's really easy to fall down a vanity metric rabbit hole. Like impressions of this particular post. I'm playing the long game. I'm not playing the post to post game. And I'm human.
That's very smart. I have to tell people that so much.
It's hard. I mean, because sometimes you'll be proud of something that you've written, and you're like, why doesn't everyone see the magic that this is? But I fall into the rabbit hole, but I try not to.
You could post at a different time and it does better. That's the thing. That's all
true.
repurposable.
So there's like the algorithm piece, right? It's what I'm trying to do is develop more followers. And which is very much a long game. And so with LinkedIn, you can be connected to someone, but then people can also follow you. So not all of my followers are necessarily people with whom I'm connected. They have chosen to follow me.
And that's in the same account? It's not separate? Because last time I was on LinkedIn, it was like you had your account and then a page. Is that changed?
Well, there's a business page, and then there's also the personal page. Since I'm a business of one, I tend to not spend a lot of time on the company page. And, the algorithm changes all the time. Some people say have a company page, other people don't. I am a practice of one, and so where and how am I going to use my time? So under my own name, under my personal page, that's where I am doing all of the posting. And so someone can follow a company. You can do that. It's just for me, since I'm just one, I just didn't see that
Seems
as
redundant.
it just didn't seem valuable to me. So people invite me to connect. I don't accept every single LinkedIn connection because I can tell when I'm about to get pitch slapped.
I love that, pitch slapped.
Yeah, I will. That's what
It's
I don't
hard.
enjoy about it. The those sales navigation tools, I get it. People have to find leads. They have to generate
It's the same as though
leads.
like, hey, how you going? Here's my business card. It's like, you don't even know who I am yet.
Precisely.
I can't stand it.
Precisely. And yet people still continue doing that. So once I
Yeah.
can tell that I'm about to be pitch slapped based on the invitation, I won't accept
I'm
the...
stealing that. I hope you're okay with that.
No, I mean, my friend, you're stealing it from my friend David.
Okay, thanks, David.
But so I don't accept everyone as a connection.
Yeah.
If someone chooses to follow me, they are certainly free to do so. I can't do so. I can't stop them from following me. And I have had some clients who found me on, like one current client actually who found me on LinkedIn, and it's a very nice piece of business. And yes, it takes a long amount of time up front to generate that level of following such that a conversation is created. And if you're using LinkedIn strategically, it's indexed. Some of the things you can do on LinkedIn are indexable on Google. So you're finding ways for people to learn about you, absorb you. There's a couple and also I know I'm rambling, but I just remembered something.
That's good.
So if you publish enough on LinkedIn, they give you access to creating your own newsletter. And that's the frequency. You could have an article under your own newsletter, whatever frequency you want. I do it every other week. And so I have developed a larger number of followers because of that newsletter. So it's called, a Modern Badass Tales from the Front. And it's a field guide for modern badasses. That's what I call it. And it's something that I share. And at the end of it, there's a call to action on the bottom. Whether or not people avail themselves of the call to action, that's certainly on them.
Yeah.
They know of me. They have to decide that the pain that they're experiencing is so great that it's time to have a conversation with me.
Of course. Yeah.
So can I tell how much more memorable I am in someone else's psyche? No. But if I'm consistent, eventually a conversation will be generated. You don't make money on LinkedIn. However, you can make money from the conversations that are generated as a function of LinkedIn, or generated as function of speaking in front of a group, which is how I met you, or generated as a function of publishing a book. You don't make money off of a book unless you're Stephen King or Brene Brown or whomever.
Yeah.
But you make money off the conversations that are created. That's what I aim to do. It's the long game.
Yeah, and the thing with the numbers and everything, that is a very valuable point. And that's what I got to get across to a lot of people too. I tell people, I'm like, I've made more money off Instagram in terms of like leads and people than people that I know that have 10 times, 20 times the followers that I do, or the impressions, because it's all how you build that relationship and figure out how to build it so that people trust you above your competition. And it's the same. It would be the same with LinkedIn, and if people don't feel like they're getting slapped all the time, I got to make sure I really articulate the P.
Yeah, that's the thing
trick
there. Right.
That's the biggest thing. And with your content, at least it's like, it's a lot of value, and then just a call to action where it feels like there's a lot of call to actions that they lead at the start.
Right.
Because the marketing motif, or I guess metaphor I always use, is like dating.
Right.
Most people act like that sleazy guy at a bar trying to get laid that night.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, this is why you should choose us. This is why we're great. This is why we're trusted. It's like, how about you just show me so I can trust you versus tell me you can be trusted? Baby, it's okay. You can trust me.
Right.
No, I can't.
Right. I mean, we all buy an emotion and we rationalize later on features and benefits. And so if you're leading with a product or a service, or I get emails all the time saying, here's all the different ways that your website is lacking. Which, I'm like, I don't know why.
Why would you leave with that?
Yeah, I'm like, why are you telling me that I am like failing?
Yeah, it's sort of like, I don't want to be a bitch, but it's like, you're going to be, okay?
Right. I mean, I get emails all the time. Here's why you're terrible at SEO. Here's why, I'm like, yeah, I probably am terrible at SEO, but, so many hours in a day, and I'm not selling T-shirts. So, look at the type of business I'm in, and then let's have a conversation.
Well, a lot of them don't.
You're right.
A lot of them don't. That's the thing. Like, some guy hit me up. He's like, hey, do you want to grow your business by marketing? I'm like, huh?
Right.
I was like, do you know what I do?
I know.
I was like, what are you talking about? But they don't. It's spamming. The leading with the negative, though, sometimes can be useful. Like my saying for my stuff is, I don't do content that you like. I will do content that your customers want to see.
That's not negative, though.
It's a leading with like a perceived negative, but then with a tail end of a positive. There's another one that they say is like, say you got a small Airbnb. Look, you're not going to be able to fit a lot in here. You can't bring a lot of things, but it's warm and cozy. You're like, oh, okay, I kind of want warm and cozy.
Well, I mean, they're taking the objections off the table is, in the content you like versus what other people want is that you are training them to not think about themselves and then thinking about the people that are receiving whatever the content is they might be receiving. For me, it feels different from, here's everything that's wrong.
Here's why you suck.
Yeah. Here's everything that's wrong with your website. It is, and because what they're saying, I don't know that, I'm not suggesting that they are thinking this, but how it lands with me is you're a dumbass.
Yeah. It's just, like, hey, how you going? Nice to meet you. By the way, this is where you're doing bad.
Yeah, you're failing.
Yeah.
Or,
you're
too
you don't even
stupid.
know if I'm failing.
Right. You don't even know if I'm failing. You're too stupid to know. I mean, sometimes I get the emails. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I haven't paid attention to that.
Yeah.
Like,
thank you for the advice.
I'm like, and they don't know, and they're trying their best. Everyone's got to eat. I get it. It's more of the, since I'm mostly in the referral business, I'm not putting ads out on Facebook, or I'm not even doing LinkedIn ads. It's more of I'm using conversation to draw people in.
Yeah.
And I have a network of people that say, it sounds like you should talk to Parissa for X or Y or Z. That I am deliberately building a business like that.
Yeah.
And so, that is informing how I frame things or how I'm absorbing things as they come in.
Well, it's also like, your content you're doing is creating touch points as well. Because one thing I've noticed with what typically works is, more times than not, it's people are seeing my content, but they also know someone who's using me and my team's services. Yeah. And then they've kind of already made up their mind they want to use me. They just want that little social push. Right. And I'd be like, hey, is he good? And then, my client's like, yeah, we've had this result.
Validation and the feeling like they made a good decision, like feeling smart.
Yeah. But without those touch points online, it might have taken 6 months longer or not happened at all,
Yeah, they're absolutely necessary, and those touch points are absent something being three-dimensional, that is the best way that they are going to be able to experience you. And they will pick up whatever it is they might be feeling, and then picking up on the tangible stuff, which they pretend like they're evaluating you on the tangible stuff, but it's really the feeling stuff.
Yeah.
And then when they go for the social proof, when they go for a friend or whomever, and they say, well, that person appears to be a really successful person, or reputationally they're smart, and if they're working with Blake, then it must be okay that I can too.
Yeah,
it's all. I just want to feel smart. That's really what people want. I just want to feel smart for deciding to work with this person.
Yeah. Otherwise, they'll have buyer's remorse, and they're not.
Yeah.
Well, it's like what is it, the emotional thing. No one's ever rationally bought a Ferrari.
No.
No one has ever, but Ferrari's doing pretty well for themselves, and I think that's what I try and tell people too is people also don't buy your products, they buy the outcome.
Right.
No one buys the thing, and that's one thing I've noticed with how people market. They market the thing.
Right.
All the time. I'm like, stop leading with the thing.
Right.
Because I don't care, like, all right, I don't care that this is in a can. What I care about is that, all right, one, it's going to be cold because that's the outcome. And two, there's a lot less plastic and, there's those emotional things, but I care about like, oh, I'm at least doing a bit for the environment.
Right.
But if they were just like, it comes in a can and this is why it's good, I'd be like, huh?
Right. And then, look at the treatment on the can. The branding is genius. Liquid Death. It's badass. It's a little edgy. You're badass. You're a little edgy. You don't have any F's to give. This product is 100% made for people like you.
100%.
Yeah. And you have no F's to give.
Yeah. And I also like the part of the reason I also enjoy it is there's that little bit of, I love when people like it, being marketing, I'm always trying to figure out ways to break through the crowd. Like we went to a Ferrari event recently. It was held at Ferrari, and it was black tie. I only found that out 10 minutes before, and I was like, I'm rocking up in this. I was literally in shorts and leggings underneath, looking like I just came from the gym. And most people are terrified of that. But at the marketing brain, I'm like, well, no, I need a reason for people to be like, who is that? Like, I'm okay with the initial like, huh?
Right.
Because now it's like, well, at least I've opened that door, and then they start talking to me, and then they can be like either, huh, this guy's really interesting, or yeah, it's about what I expected.
Well, I mean, and not everyone is for you, and that's the thing is being very aware of who it is you like to work with, and who it is that likes to work with, and making your peace with that.
Yeah.
We can't market to everyone, nor should we.
No.
We can't serve everyone, nor should we. And once we get to that place where we have tremendous clarity on who the best types of clients are, then everything becomes much easier. So that was on brand for you to show up at the Ferrari event without the black. Actually, it would have been like detracting for you if you showed up in the black.
Well, that was the thing. I saw some people where when I did see him in a suit, I'm like, that's weird. Some of them I haven't seen him in a suit before, but I was like, that also makes sense. But there were some where I was like, I'm weirded out by that,
Yeah.
And I'm like, the rough side of you is the beautiful part of you. So why silence that? Why suppress it? Recently, I have gotten some more fancier clothes because my parents were just here, and when my parents are around, like I have a shopping problem that just gets ignited, But it was still like dressy clothes, but I was like, it was with my branding in mind, which is like outrageous. Like I bought these slip-ons that they're black and they have literally spikes on them, and it's just like, again, it's like, what is this guy wearing? But then they meet me and they're like, makes sense. Like it was hilarious.
It works for you.
My mom I go to mom, what do you think of these? And she's like, oh, they're so you, walks away. And my wife, dad, and I were like, that was weird. I didn't think mom would be all for it. And then dad's holding the shoe box as we're walking out, and she goes, oh, what'd you get? And dad goes, the spiky shoes. And she's like, oh yeah. And I'm like, no, I did. And she's like, what? What? I go, oh, you weren't for them? She's like, you are ridiculous. So I was like, there we go.
That's the answer.
That's what I'm after, But yeah, it's I think the really important thing is people just being comfortable showing themselves, and like if it's not potentially PC, politically correct, and all that, you should just, if you're willing to be that person behind the lines, what's the problem with putting it up in front? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because I've always said to people, if you're putting a persona out online, how long can you keep that persona going when that customers come to speak to you?
Yeah.
And then it's really awkward because they're like, they feel like they've been lied to.
Right.
And the trust has just gone
completely after, versus I want people to be able to walk up to me and my clients and they're like, I just feel like I know you.
Right.
You know? Like let's move forward. How do we move forward in this relationship?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to that point you made before about production quality on TikTok or some video. It's like let people see you in your element. There is, I mean, yes, there's a certain amount of window dressing that we all have, and when I'm on Zoom, you know, my background is a certain way, or I make sure. And when I'm on Zoom, I have special glasses I wear for Zoom that don't block my eyes. That was a lesson I learned in COVID. Is that if the glasses are too narrow, it blocks the eyes and it creeps people out.
Yeah.
So you know, there are things that you have to do to create something, a scene, let's say. But other than that, people aren't stupid. They will eventually figure you out. So the quicker you decide who you're for and who you're not for, I think the better. Yeah,
because one of our episodes we put out was about when I was single. So there were some wild stories, you know, but that's my past, you know, and my wife goes, you sure you want to put that out? And I was like, if someone watches this and that's the thing that they're like, I just don't want to work with this guy, I never wanted to work with them. Because that means that they're being judgmental and that you never have the ability to change, but also just experience stuff that you wouldn't do now.
Right.
You know? Because and they're the people I don't want to be around because you're always walking on eggshells. It's
right.
They're not going to be happy with my product because there's no room for error.
Right.
And I got better things to do with my time. So is my team. They don't want to be constantly.
And also you want to be happy.
Yep.
The people that you're spending time with or the work that you're doing, you don't want it to feel like torture. There's this thing called the Einstein time. You can spend hours doing something you love and it can feel like a minute. Or you could spend a minute doing something you hate and it can feel like hours.
Yeah.
And so how can we create situations where we're only spending time doing the things that we find enjoyable with and for people that we like?
Yeah.
There have been pieces of business that I've had in the past that were torturous. And I 100% took those pieces of business not because I didn't know they were going to be torturous. I took them out of scarcity. And yes, I was paid. And on the other hand, it was the most excruciating time I ever spent. And be clear. Don't take a piece of business. Don't work with someone. Don't go to a company if it's not feeling like they are your people.
Yeah. Yeah, because then you're committing to like just torture and it's not worth it.
No, it really isn't. It would be real death as opposed to liquid death.
Yeah. All right, well, let's end on that because hopefully on that Einstein point, this hasn't felt long. That was 2 hours.
No, it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
So for people listening, I'm going to put your details in the description anyway. But for people listening, where can they reach you?
They can reach me on LinkedIn, Parissa Behnia on LinkedIn, and my website, sixensestrategy.com, SIXENSE strategy.com.
Yeah, pay attention to that spelling because when you texted me or something, I was like, it threw me off. I was like, I had to read it 4 times, like Sixense. It's clever. I like it.
Yeah, it's a contrived word. It's fun. I have fun with it.
Yeah, I like it. And so the badass, what was it? Modern badass.
Modern badass.
I like that too.
Thank you.
It's cool. Well, thank you for being on.
Thank you.
Yes.
This was so much fun.
Yes. And guys, if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do hit the bell notification because you don't want to miss out. These do come out every Monday, 7 a.m. Yeah. So till next time, guys. Bye. All done.
Thank you.
That was fun.
That was fun.